No other borderline in the United States ever marked so much division than the Mason and Dixon Line. The figurative divide between the North and the South during the American Civil War, the Mason and Dixon Line would be world famous for being the separation between one idea of freedom and another. But before the famous borderline between the states of Maryland and Pennsylvania gained this recognition, it was a center of a divide between two powerful families within the court of the British royals. The story of the Mason-Dixon Line does not begin with the Civil War. It begins with a mapping mistake, continued with bloodshed of a border war, finished with a possible deceitful agreement, and finally put to bed through a ruling by the King of England himself. Join us as we walk through the history of this famous line and walk in the footsteps of its famous surveyors. So today I am joined with my buddy here, Brandon, and we are going to hike the Mason and Dixon Line, at least 1 mile of it, between mile markers 114 and mile 115. To start off, I'm going to show you this marker right here, and if you see it, this is mile marker 114. For every mile on the Mason-Dixon Line, they actually placed a stone and to mark the border. The mile markers here that were marked every mile had a M and a P on it. One side had M for Maryland and the other side had P for Pennsylvania. And then every 5 miles they would have what was called a crown stone, which is what we're going to explore and try to find here today, which is 1 mile due west from our location from where we're standing at right now. This location here is actually right along Blair Valley Road. This is in the yard of a private individual named Edward Dayhoff, and he is nice enough that he actually mows a section on the other side of the line from him. He's in Pennsylvania. He mows the side in Maryland where the Indian Springs wildlife management area is for Maryland state game lands. But he maintains this just so people can come here and look at the stone. Now this stone is original. It was originally set over 250 years ago in 1767 by the surveying party of Mason and Dixon themselves. And again, we're going to walk due west and try to find the crown stone, mile marker 115. To start the story of the Mason-Dixon Line, we have to go the whole way back to 1608, over 250 years before the American Civil War. And we have to talk about Captain John Smith. Captain John Smith being of Pocahontas fame, if you ever watched any Disney movies. But Captain John Smith, he actually traveled through the areas around the Chesapeake Bay, surveying the lands around Virginia. And in 1613, John Smith actually created a map and he published it. And he put in place the location of the 40th degree parallel latitude, meaning the latitude and longitude of the planet. He actually described the 40th degree latitude on his map in relation to the lands around the Chesapeake Bay in Virginia. Smith's map was used by the English kings to give land grants to his people. So in 1632, King Charles I, who was the king of England at the time, granted Lord Baltimore, or also known as the family of Calverts, or the Calvert family. They were granted the uncultivated land lying under the 40th degree parallel and north of the Potomac River from the Delaware Bay. So anything west of the Delaware Bay meeting those two criteria, between the 40th degree parallel and the Potomac River. As the proprietor of Maryland, the Calvert family, who were part of the royal family since they were the lords or the barons of Baltimore, they would sell this land and collect taxes to continue to build their royal estates. Now in 1681, for services rendered by his father for the British Crown, during wartime, of course, William Penn was granted by King Charles II, who was the King of England at that time, and he was granted land west of the Delaware River, limited on the south by the beginning of the 40th degree parallel, with the exception of a 12-mile circle from Newcastle, which was claimed by the king's brother, James, who was the Duke of York. Now, as the proprietor of Pennsylvania, William Penn, who was a commoner but very influential in the royal court, would also sell land off, and he would collect what was called quiet rent to help pay for his province and his lifestyle as well. But in 1682, it was discovered that Captain John Smith's map marking the 40th degree parallel was wrong. What he marked as the 40th degree parallel was roughly 19 miles further south than the actual 40th degree parallel. The actual 40th degree parallel did not even intersect the 12-mile circle around Newcastle, which made William Penn's land grant completely and utterly nonsensical. And that, of course, also put the majority of Philadelphia, which was Penn's planned capital, in the province of Maryland. Now, since Smith was wrong, Penn technically lost millions of acres, including his capital city, and Maryland claimed it all. And because of this, the proprietors of both Pennsylvania and Maryland went to British court. As many of the things that I go and visit, a lot of times there's no signs to mark where they're at. Well, in this case, I actually have a sign that marks where this mile marker 114 is. Unfortunately, the sign here is wrong. It says Mason Dixon Line Stargazer Stone. It's not the Stargazer Stone. If anybody knows something about the Mason Dixon Line, the Stargazer Stone is actually a quartz stone to be buried in a field out in the eastern Pennsylvania, not all that far from Philadelphia and the Delaware border. And it was where they had observations, or their observatory set up to measure the stars. Both Mason and Dixon did. But anyway, this is not technically called a Stargazer Stone. It's a mile marker, but it does have a sign at least, so that's better than some places that I go visit. Just to give you a perspective of what we're doing, see that large mountain right there that's really, really tall? That's where we're heading, Brandon. What do you think?
Yeah, that's up there a ways.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
You said a small hike.
Oh, is that what I did?
Yeah.
It's only a mile. It's just straight up, that's all.
First obstacle is a stream, which we found a fallen tree we're going to try to use.
I'm going to try. Oh, the bad order, Brandon. What's the chance of this working, Brandon?
If it don't break when you drop it.
Yeah, that would be a problem.
You know, we had rain for the last 3 days, so the water's a little bit higher than we thought it would be.
I'm going to lay this here. If I make it across, you can throw it across at me.
Got it.
Let's be smart.
Put it the other way, maybe. Put the small end this way. That way it's...
Now, the sad part of it is I get across and you can't. We're gonna be
I'll run and jump.
this way.
Oop.
All right. It gives so much. Okay. This is the interesting picture of Brandon trying to negotiate around briar bushes as he attempts to push further west into the interior of the wilderness. So we just came through that briar patch right there. That was fun. We found one tick so far, thank God. And it is beginning of April, so we're hoping that we can eliminate a lot of the ticks. Anyway, to continue on our story with the Mason Dixon Line. So there was a problem with Delaware. The Dutch actually claimed the land along the western shores of the Delaware Bay, and they claimed it before the 1730s, which is before the charter for Maryland with the Calvert families, because that was in 1632, and this was in the in the 1630s or before the 1630s when the Dutch claimed it. And in order to claim that land for England, James, the Duke of York, entered the Dutch colony and removed them, and he claimed Delaware via the right of conquest. Now, Charles Calvert, who was the 3rd Baron of Baltimore, he claimed that his 1632 grant to his family gave him the land to the Delaware Bay, including Delaware, which meant that he also claimed Delaware. But William Penn, adding into the whole thing here, he feared, because of the fake 40th degree parallel, that he was going to lose his seaport at Philadelphia. So he figured that his colony was now going to be landlocked. So he agreed to lease Delaware, which William Penn referred to as the 3 lower counties of Pennsylvania. And he was going to lease it from his friend, the Duke of York. The length of the lease, 10,000 years. This deal was struck between the Duke of York and William Penn, and so Penn also claimed Delaware. So King Charles II dies, and James, which is his brother and also the Duke of York, becomes King James II. And King James wanted to fix the Delaware problem, since he had a stake in it, of course, and also the issue of the 40th degree parallel. So King James referred this problem to the Board of Trade and Foreign Plantations, who made their decision in November of 1685. They agreed that the land granted to Lord Baltimore, according to his grant, was for uncultivated land only, and land that's only inhabited by savages, not by Christians. So because the Christians, aka the Dutch, inhabited and cultivated Delaware before the grant, he had no claim. So the decision of 1685 was that the land from the Delaware Bay to the Chesapeake Bay was to be divided in half by drawing a horizontal line at the latitude of Cape Henlopen from the Delaware Bay to the Chesapeake Bay. Then they would divide that line in half, and at that half point they would run a line tangent to the 12-mile circle around Newcastle and run up to the actual 40th degree latitude, not the incorrect one of John Smith's map. The land east of that line would be James II's, to do with as he wished, such as lease it to his friend William Penn. And the land west would belong to Charles Calvert, the 3rd Baron of Baltimore. The idea was Maryland would lose Delaware, but would gain land in Pennsylvania by claiming land 19 miles north of John Smith's wrong 40th degree latitude to the actual 40th degree latitude. Also, with this deal, Philadelphia would still belong to William Penn in Pennsylvania. And a decision like this, where everybody wins, should be good, right? Wrong. This all sounded good until the new problem arose, which was called the Glorious Revolution. In 1688, King James II was removed from his throne and replaced by William and Mary in what was known as the Glorious Revolution. And this caused political turmoil in England. So no lines were marked, and Penn and Calvert were selling land to people in the same plot of ground, not knowing who owned what, and didn't pay attention to anything that the 1685 decision said.
Finally, no more briar bushes. It's open. Straight up now.
All right, let's get the hell out of here. Keep on moving.
Right on. Why is it sleeting?
Oh my God. Yeah, it's April.
Well, I think I'd rather have that than rain. I'm not getting wet.
That's true. Just rolls right off of you. That's hail, ain't it?
Yeah.
See what happens when you come on an adventure with me, Brandon?
Yeah.
You get crossing.
It's either rain, hot as can be,
or it's hailing.
Can't say lost yet because we're not there.
No, we're not. We're not lost yet. I know where I'm at.
Me too, in the woods.
It's hailing. Hey, if neither rain or sleet nor hail stops the mail.
Well, I'm not a mailman.
Well, this is history, though.
Yeah.
Does it stop history?
Not yet. Man, that's putting it down too.
That's impressive.
Some big pieces now.
Holy crap. This is interesting.
Like the size of a pea. Getting pretty big piece. Well, we got green, briars, and hail.
Green briars and hail. And a river crossing, or a creek crossing, or what you want to call it. Never a dull moment.
Brooker adventure.
Exactly. Good Lord.
That's pretty fast, man. Problem is, we're too far now to turn around.
Well, we're not turning around. No, no, no. There's clear skies on the top of the mountain.
And of course, there's no pine trees.
No, there's no pine trees.
No pine trees to take cover of. Basically, you're screwed. When they did this, they had a 500-pound stone on their back.
Well, and also when they were surveying it in April, they actually had to stop because they had like a crap ton of snow.
Like now.
Well,
You said April.
yeah, like April, but they actually had snow. I mean, they had like feet of snow. So we're doing not too bad if we just got hail. Could be a lot worse. So we can tell we're definitely on the Pennsylvania-Maryland line because we got to stay on public land, which is in Maryland, because this is the wildlife management area and it's public land, but on the Pennsylvania side, it's private land. As you can tell from that sign right over there. So we are on the Mason Dixon line. So in the land between the 40th degree parallel and Smith's incorrect 40th degree parallel, people didn't know which colony they actually belonged to, and thus, which colony do you pay taxes to? So when a Maryland tax collector came, the landowner would claim that he was from Pennsylvania, and then he'd throw the Maryland tax collector out because he said he pays Pennsylvania taxes. But then when a Pennsylvania tax collector shows up, the same landowner throws the Pennsylvania tax collector out and tells him, I belong to Maryland, I pay taxes to Maryland. So in the end, nobody really paid any taxes, which is a problem for the proprietors of the two colonies. Thomas Cressup, he was a land agent for Maryland, and he was claiming and selling land for the Calvert family above John Smith's incorrect 40th degree parallel. And he was selling all this for Lord Baltimore, of course. And in October of 1730, while operating his ferry across the Susquehanna River, Cressup was involved in an altercation with Pennsylvanians where guns were drawn, and he was forced to defend himself with his oar and his fists. Cressup, he escaped and the losing fight that he was fighting by leaping off of his ferry and swimming to shore. Unsatisfied with the judges of Pennsylvania prosecuting his attackers, Cressup filed a suit in Maryland and refused to follow Pennsylvania law, thinking that Pennsylvania was conspiring against him, and he became a hardcore Marylander at that point. Cressup became an absolute pain to Pennsylvania as he continued to claim and sell land in this disputed area between the fake 40th degree parallel and the actual 40th degree parallel. He was selling this land for Maryland, but the land was claimed by Pennsylvania and Maryland. So he actually sometimes would force Pennsylvania grant holders off of their own property that they held a grant from Pennsylvania for. And of course, this started a whole chain of events of problems with a border war. William Penn died in 1718 without reaching an agreement on the border with his neighbor, the Calverts of Maryland. And he passed his province on to his sons, which were the Penn brothers, and they got control of Pennsylvania. Charles Calvert, the 3rd Baron of Baltimore, died in 1715, and he passed his province of Maryland on to his grandson, whose name was Charles also. Charles Calvert, 5th Baron of Baltimore. And in 1731, Charles, the 5th Baron of Baltimore, petitioned King George II, who was the King of England at the time. And he petitioned him to order the proprietors of Pennsylvania to meet with Lord Baltimore to solve the border dispute once and for all. The king ordered them to come to an agreement within a year, or the king himself would issue orders to solve the border dispute. Within the month, the Penn brothers and Lord Baltimore met to discuss the border. During the discussion, it was decided to use a map to draw the border lines. And the map chosen to be used was one that Lord Baltimore happened to pull out of his pocket. And apparently, unknown to Baltimore, this map was incorrect, because the Cape Henlopen marked on that map was actually 15 miles south of its actual location, which could cause a problem. So now we're using incorrect maps once again. An agreement was struck in which the following was the case, being close to the original 1685 decision, of course, but a little bit different. A 12-mile circle will be drawn around Newcastle. A trans-peninsular line at the latitude of Cape Henlopen will be drawn per the map. That was, of course, incorrect. And that incorrection, or that problem, was actually unknown to Lord Baltimore himself, even though it was his map out of his pocket. A tangent line, tangent to the 12-mile circle, will be drawn from the center point of the trans-peninsular line to the tangent point of the circle. And then from the tangent point, the line will run due north until it intersects the western running border. Now, the western running border will be 15 miles south of the most southern point of Philadelphia, which put it close to the John Smith false 40th degree parallel. So running close to the 1-year deadline established by the king, the Penn brothers and Lord Baltimore hastily signed an agreement on May the 10th of 1732. And this agreed to the false Cape Henlopen location, lowering the southern Delaware border by 15 miles in comparison to the 1685 decision, and also agreeing to the false 40th degree parallel, lowering the Pennsylvania-Maryland border 19 miles in comparison to the 1685 decision, to almost to the, or around the area of the John Smith incorrect 40th degree parallel. This was a major screw-up for Lord Baltimore, because he lost a lot of ground, and somehow he didn't realize it until after the agreement was signed. So the 1732 agreement screwed him royally, and it screwed him out of a bunch of land. So Lord Baltimore, after realizing the mistake, protested the mistake and refused to accept the agreement, and he claimed deception on the Penn's part. It is lost to history if the Penns actively deceived Baltimore, or if this was just a blunder on Lord Baltimore's part. Nobody knows. Maybe they got him drunk. We don't know.
Oh, shit. Yeah. Straight out the rock pile.
Tally-ho.
Yeah.
One part. See, I promised all these people that I would never fall off a cliff again. I'm gonna try to keep that promise.
We're not done yet.
Damn. Almost there. There's the cliff we're talking about. Yeah, let's not fall off that cliff.
Must be some streams up there, rocks are wet.
There's a stream on this mountain top. Yeah, and that's where we came. And that's where we're going. Between 1732 and 1736, Thomas Cressup became the main antagonist against Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania land claim owners, as he threatened lives, burned down property, and bullied Pennsylvanians living between the actual 40th degree parallel and the John Smith false 40th degree parallel. And he was bullying them because they were Pennsylvanians settling on what he considered Maryland land. In fact, Cressup claimed his own land that he was granted by the Calverts in this zone. He actually claimed it by building his house within feet of the Pennsylvanian who occupied the same land on a Pennsylvania grant. So this became such a problem, it was called the Cressup War. And in 1736, the sheriff of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, led a posse of 24 men to Cressup's home on the opposite side of the Susquehanna River from Lancaster. And they actually were coming to capture what was called the Maryland Monster. The sheriff actually set fire to Cressup's home, offering to put it out if Cressup would surrender. Cressup would not surrender, but he and his men, and his very pregnant wife, by the way, would start shooting at the posse as the house burned down around them. He even positioned his own children in the windows so the lawmen wouldn't shoot through the openings, and his wife went into labor during the battle. As the floor was about to cave in, Cressup and his men ran from the house while firing at their attackers. Cressup was wounded and apprehended and taken to a jail in Philadelphia. While being paraded through the streets of Philadelphia, below the actual 40th degree parallel, the prisoner would cry out, "Damn it, this is one of the prettiest towns in Maryland." Hey on again. Ridiculous, huh?
Ridiculous.
Leisurely writing, harems of women on multiple continents, drug use, and turning his large estates into a Turkish palace. Ain't it? Hey, we got buzzards flying over top of us. That's a good sign, ain't it? See if I can fall on my face and record it for posterity.
Never going on a hike with you again.
Oh, sweet bridge.